Shakespearean characters are relevant all the time. According to me, even after so many years, still Shakespearean characters are living in the society. Shakespearean emotions are visible in the society. In the case of Shakespearean plays, actually, I think in my place in Kerala, the expression of Shakespearean play came to my mind or my memories through an art form called Katha Prasangam. That's a storytelling art form. In the stage, there will be a storyteller accompanied with one harmonium player and a tablaist. And they used to perform in the temples and some kind of social gatherings. Most of the time they are performing during night, maybe in the midnight. I experienced Othello during my childhood. When I was a kid, I think around 12 o'clock midnight, I was sitting with my mother in a temple ground and almost partially sleeping, but the expression of storyteller made me to awake. So the presence and beautiful narration of a story, Othello, with story at the same time, the most of the important sequences he is linking with songs. Especially in the case of expression of Desdemona, he is expressing through a song, Apsarasanande Desdemon. He is singing like that. He is singing with a song, he is expressing the beauty of Desdemona. Like that, he is expressing the features of Othello also. And every characters. I think it will take around 2.5 to 3 hours to complete the story. So the whole temple ground is filled with people, and they came and they sat down on mat, or maybe they are holding some lanterns to go back home. And just imagine during midnight, he is telling the story. And on the stage there will be one big light in front of that storyteller, the only light with a tungsten, maybe yellow light. And the whole crowd waiting and listening to the story, Othello. Then this particular storyteller, his name is Sambasivan. I think he used to tell this story in different places, maybe 1,000 stages in a year. Totally maybe more than 10,000. But he is a very famous storyteller during that time. So in my mind, the Othello is a story and a feel, and it haunted me like anything. I even still thinking about that particular night, and before Shakespeare, Othello came to me. Othello's expression, Desdemona's expression, Iago's expression came to me. Sambasivan performed the same story because that popular. I also listened that. So it was there in my mind as a pain. Because why Othello killed Desdemona? Because an innocent, beautiful lady killed because of a suspicion in his mind. I love nature. From my childhood, I am an observer of nature. Now we started an organization called Birds Club International, where we are planning to plant a lot of small rain grows across the country. In schools and colleges and in the public places, we are trying to create small forest. And we are inviting students to make short films about nature, through that particular window, we are connecting students to the nature. And especially in this case, in this age, students, they are all very much interested in the visual aspects. So we are connecting this nature with short films and documentaries, even photographs. So there should be something to connect with. So the nature habits, nature love, and observing nature, bird watching, and all kind of emotional attitude towards nature and the feel of protection towards nature. It has to grow in students' mind, people's mind. That's why we created the club called the Birds Club International. And every year we used to celebrate an international film festival called the Rain International Nature Film Festival. After so many years, I came to the industry as a filmmaker. Once in 1996, I thought of making a Shakespearean adaptation. I was thinking of how will I express the dual personality of Othello. That was the difficult part. So whenever I am thinking about Shakespearean plays, I am thinking about nature. The contribution of nature is very much possible in Shakespearean plays because the ups and downs of the characters, which will definitely contributed with the nature, with the support of nature, it can enhance. So there is an art form in Kerala called Thea. Thea means God. Thea performer called God player, and that particular performance called the play of God, because a person performing with all the costumes and ornaments, with makeup and all, crown and everything. And this God, the whole villages, his parents, his wife, children, everybody will come and stand in front of the God and ask him for help. The God will bless them. So the person, one who is performing God, who is having a mind of real human insight, that was the part I was thinking of, dual personality or split personality. So here in Othello's mind also there is a split personality. He loves his wife, at the same time he wants to kill. So that good and bad, the conflict. So the possibility of expressing the conflict. The play I have to express through some other forms. That's what in Othello, in play of God, in Kaliyattam, I made in a very different way. So I just made that particular theme to a nature where a lot of ups and downs, hilly area with a lot of mountains and all. And the theme performer, he is just looking to the mountain and asking for help. All the themes will come to the top of the mountain and they are keeping silent and going back. That was the moment just before killing Desdemona. That was his confusion. He was expressing, "Oh God, what should I do? How can you help me?" They're all going back without any answers. So there are a lot of possibilities are there in Shakespearean expression. Shakespearean characters can enhance with the natures, not the beauty alone, but the ups and downs. I have already directed Othello, Antony and Cleopatra, and Macbeth. In all the plays, there is a beautiful possibility to express nature. In Shakespearean play, especially, because of the emotion and the possibility of the involvement of nature, I am totally fascinated. All the time, I am first of all looking for how can we incorporate with the nature in the play. Even with the emotions of characters, how can I blend with the nature? But if you are going to the urban side of nature, otherwise if you are telling a story, Shakespearean story in the city backdrop, I never feel it's that good, because The Shakespearean plays are beyond that. There is a lot of scopes to grow and enlarge. So in the urban city area, there will be a lot of limitations in life. There is life, but still the possibility of visuals which can express it to any extent, that is, I think, totally different from Shakespearean concepts. So I always looking for a nature which is very much adaptable or suitable or expressible for the Shakespearean plays and characters' mind. While making Kannagi, Antony and Cleopatra, I was looking for a location which is mysterious, because in the case of Cleopatra, all the stories about Cleopatra is still mysterious. So in the case of Kannagi also mysterious. So I am looking for a place where mysterious feel is there. So I found a place with a lot of palm trees and isolated place where a small hut is there, as Kannagi's house, and the way to her house, that's a very long way, and the palm trees and palm leaves, the wind blowing with the palm leaves, that sound making mysterious again. But at the same time, this particular landscape is very near to Kerala, Tamil Nadu, in the state border area. So there will be cockfight also. Most of the places in India, especially border places, Kerala, Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, everywhere there will be gangs of cockfight. They are always in that particular game and they very much involved in that. So I took this cockfight as the war. So in the Cleopatra period, cockfight was there, but at the same time war is there. But here there is no possibility to express the emotion of war. But at the same time we can exhibit or express the emotion of war through this cockfight. So the mystery of Kannagi or mystery of Cleopatra is there with the contribution of the nature. At the same time, cockfight is the representation of war. But the presence of snake and presence of cock and all these kind of nature expressions, which is very much relevant in this particular play and in the film too. And death of Cleopatra, the death of Kannagi is also almost like snake bite, and the execution of that snake bite incident and the cockfight war effect is also almost similar to that, and at the same time the total nature is mysterious enough to express it. So whenever the contribution of nature with Shakespearean plays, Shakespearean characters, Shakespearean emotions and the expressions, it can enhance like anything. In the case of Macbeth also, I made Macbeth in the backdrop of Northern Ballads, which is I think older than Shakespearean age, but the same Macbeth is there in that story also. It's called Chandu, Northern Ballads, who is a performer of Kalari performer, martial arts performer. Almost similar kind, all the expressions of Macbeth is there in Chandu also, which is much older than Shakespearean time. So that Northern Ballads and Shakespearean play, Macbeth, we mixed. So the martial arts and the war, we mixed. So an expression of tragedy of ambition of Macbeth. Here also a story like that. In the case of Chandu, a tragedy of ambition, who killed his closest relative, and the supported by and with the influence of Lady Macbeth. Here also there is a character called Kuttimani who influenced Chandu to kill Aromal, here to kill the king. So a lot of similarities are there. Almost every scenes are similar, but the expression is different. In Macbeth, here we are contributing a nature with a very difference. A lot of antique formations of rocky area with the sculptures and even the houses and the temples and the place where the war is taking place, the duel is taking place, with a lot of monument looking places. And the expression is more conveyed. The prediction is like that: the rain and forest coming together against Macbeth, against Chandu, then only you will be defeated. So the expression of Macbeth, the expression of Chandu is more expressive than the original play. So the duel, final duel during rain, the death of Macbeth, the death of Chandu during rain. So according to me, all these three adaptations, Othello, Antonio and Cleopatra and Macbeth, the all expressions, the all adaptations are very different from other adaptations of Shakespeare. So we are adding nature into it. I would like to do more Shakespearean plays in future. Whenever I am thinking about Shakespearean plays and emotions, first I will think about the nature. How can a nature support Shakespearean plays? How can the nature contribute to the emotions and characters of Shakespearean expressions? Thank you.
So, when I was looking for a story or script for my next feature film after I had directed 3 films, I had been working on Macbeth for a long time. As a graduation student, I had studied Shakespeare and Macbeth as part of my text. But then I don't think it clicked me really that hard. But when I became a film student in my film school, I had to watch many classic adaptations of William Shakespeare's Macbeth. At that time, it had created a different kind of impact on me. However, when I started working on the script for a long, I kept working on it for some time, but nothing was working for me. As a, of course, it had a very strong story, plot, and the flow, but at the same time, it was not becoming my own interpretation or my own expression of the themes represented in Macbeth. However, I think sometime in 2014, when the general election happened in India, the whole election narrative, the whole narrative had shifted to a very masculine, very personal kind of a campaign. It was no more a campaign about hunger or shelter and such basic needs of human being, but it was centered around masculinity of a human being. So that made me think a little while about what is our priority, what is our concern, and how human being is thinking about the entire power trip, so to say. So that actually started triggering some ideas in my mind, and that's when the Macbeth of my interpretation of Macbeth started really shaping up. But it still took about 3 years to write that entire vision and convert it into a filmable script. By the time, it took a lot of changes, and I think it is the power of Shakespeare or power of Macbeth which prompted me to arrive at this stage. So I think that is the reason why I got stuck into Shakespeare and Macbeth. So it was Macbeth's themes, Shakespeare's ideas about human politics, human's relationship with his nature, and all these things actually sort of prompted me to take up a Shakespearean adaptation of Macbeth. Yeah, I was born and brought up in a coastal city called Mangalore. It belongs to state of Karnataka. and it's a coastal town. So I've grown amongst fishermen, and I've seen the ecological change, so to say, happening in past about 30 years. I'm an avid trekker also, so I've been visiting, and Bangalore is a very privileged place. One side we have Arabian Sea, so the sea and seamen and all those things, and within about less than about 30 kilometers we have Western Ghats, one of the very important biodiversity hotspots in the world. So which houses a lot of endangered species of flora and fauna. We were sort of blessed to be sandwiched between these two ecologically important things. So whenever I used to travel across Western Ghats and the mountains of Western Ghats, we used to meet so many villagers and tribal people in the forest. But over the years, the idea of living in harmony with nature started changing. The modern definition of development, so to say, started encroaching the last piece of green we had in the country. So a lot of species started getting extinct, and many reports started saying, oh, we didn't see the species for about 5 years now or 10 years now. At the same time, scientists were still exploring and still finding new species in the same forest. So at one angle, we were losing out on the species very rapidly. At the same time, we were discovering new things about the forest, so the new secrets, so to say. And slowly, it all started making sense. I got involved in conservation activities through various organizations who were working in these regions. At the same time, one of the catastrophic projects, so to say, or doomsday project, as we call it, the project of Netravati river diversion came into existence. So the idea was to divert a west-flowing river into east, so that they can give drinking water to the plains of India, which works probably only on paper, because the river had to be shifted from west flowing to east, and it had to climb all the way up the hill of Western Ghats and reach the plains. At the same time, due to changing ecosystem, rapidly changing ecology, the river itself was drying up. The Mangalore, which was once had a lot of water, so the entire agriculture depended on the river Netravati and many other tributaries of it. Now it was facing severe water shortage. Mangalore had to be supplied with piped water from far off places, and in summer seasons, truckload of water had to be carried off from different places to Mangalore. The factories which were established in Mangalore, one of the important factories being MRPL, Mangalore Chemical Refinery, that had to be brought to hold in the summer for about 2-3 months because there was a shortage of water. So, one side we have sea, and the other side we have Western Ghat, which becomes the catchment area for monsoon. Mangalore is also one of the places where the monsoon enters India. With all these things working for Mangalore and the water table of Mangalore, at the same time we were facing severe water shortage in Mangalore alone. So all these things happened in just my lifetime, in just past 20-30 years. So which was very, very alarming, because the nature obviously took billions of years to form the riches which it presents to us. But it took about 30-20 years to ruin everything, which is a shame actually. So we all got together, we were working in different potentials, different strengths to protect what is left of Western Ghat. At the same time, it started making different significant changes in our lifestyle also. For example, where we have shot our film Malpe, which is one of the natural fishing ports of western coastline. The port actually can support about 1,000 boats, whereas today it has about 4,000 boats. Each boat represents about 22 family. So you can imagine the number of people depending on each boat. So all these people are depending on fishing from Arabian Sea. But the fish population in Arabian Sea was dwindling because it was not getting enough time to breed. The fish was continuously being captured even in monsoon when the fish were breeding. And also the nutrition value which was reaching sea from the Western Ghat was dwindling day by day because the Western Ghat was under severe attack. In the name of development again, many highways were carved out of Western Ghats. A railway line was crossing through Western Ghat. The power grid crossed Western Ghats. Underground tunnels, many hydroelectric power projects, Netravati river diversion project. Name what you may. In the name of all these projects, the Western Ghat was completely under attack. In one way or the other, and because of all these so-called developmental projects, the Ghat or the Western Ghat was completely dilapidated. So of late we have been seeing so many landslides across Western Ghats. People lose their lives. Animal corridors, like elephant corridors, are lost, and the river is dwindling because of all these things. If the river dwindles, the river flow dwindles down. The nutrition value which reaches the sea also reduces. So naturally, the fish population also was under attack. On one side, the fish was not getting enough nutrients. On the other side, there was excessive fishing. So all these, drastic imbalances in ecology was showing its results. The economy of Mangalore depended on fishing, food products or fish canning and all those things. So the industry also got hit. The river was dwindling, so the agriculture also got hit. So all these things was right there in front of us. At the same time, we were not probably listening to it. We were driven by our greed, like probably Macbeth. So, all these things came into this film, and that's how the adaptation of Macbeth came into a thing. I'm sorry, I probably deviated from the ecosystem, but for me, the ecology and filmmaking are one and the same, because filmmaking is probably my expression of my work with ecology. So for me, it is one and the same. While adapting Macbeth, one of the main deviation what I've done is from the original text. What I've done is there is no idea of war in my film. Here, the war is against nature. So the greed is actually driving my Macbeth or Madhava to fight against the nature, which sounds ridiculous. Similar to the theme of Shakespeare, where greed is driving and he's in the killing spree. Similarly, my protagonist Madhava is actually taking upon the nature itself. He thinks that the traditional way of fishermen of catching fish when in the fishing season is not good enough. He is ambitious. He is driven by his passions, and he wants to fish with the modern technology, and he wants to become part of the clan which is actually fishing excessively in the nature. So these fight against us, against nature, is what is my concern in Paddayi, where the evil forces represents the human greed, which is actually prompting Dinesh Anna, the Duncan of my narrative, to take up mechanized fishing or deep sea fishing. See, what happens is the traditional boating, traditional fishing way of fishing can go only so much into the sea. So they can't travel for long distances and catch fish in deep seas. So there was some kind of protection for the sea in the ocean, but at the same time, there was some kind of protection for the fish in the sea. At the same time, when the mechanized fishing came into the picture, the mechanized boat used to travel far into the sea and fish extensively. So this has actually resulted in collapse of economy in the coastal town of Mangalore. So all these things are summed up in our Macbeth. So it may be meddling with monsoon, the changing of monsoon cycles in Mangalore, or reducing sea population, fish population. All these things are the indicators of how human greed is actually driving the ecology down the drain. So this was one of the main concerns in the film. One of the major concerns of this film is also about comparing urban scapes and rural scapes. What has happened in India in past couple of years is that the centralization of power has come into the towns. So whoever is living in rural part of India is made to feel that you are not equal enough to a person who lives in urban space. Maybe you are a cobbler or a fisherman in a village and you still lead a happy life. At the same time, the media reaches each and every houses and tells you that you are not good enough until you wear a certain kind of brand of shoes, or ride a bike, or own a car or a house in the city. So you are made to constantly feel inferior to the one who is living in urban life. So if a fisherman who goes out to sea at say 3:30 in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning and catches fish and comes back at 11 o'clock and has a good life, has a good social life, has a good family life. At the same time, he's constantly made to think that he's lesser human being than the one who is toiling, 24/7 in a city. So the ambitions are shifted. So this is one of the concerns I wanted to deal with in my film. You may be a watchman in a multi-storied building or in a mall, but still you're considered to be superior to that person who's living a happy life in a rural setup. So this artificial sense of pride or the possession has actually changed the society life in India very, very drastically, and this is driven by human greed, where we think that with our modern machinery we can change everything and own everything. The sense of owning in parts of rural Karnataka, the sense of owning has a very different meaning. For example, where we shot this film, Malpe, there they don't have compound walls between houses. They don't have boundary lines which demarks this land. I own this land, and you can't enter this land. So that idea is very, very thin. Whereas in urban spaces, you divide and share and sell pieces of land, and there's sense of ownership. You are somebody only if you own a certain kind of possessions in city. Like if you own a small tiny house in the city, then you are supposed to be special. You belong to a upper middle class or something. So this idea driven by passion is something which is very new to India and which is sort of ruining its social fabric. That's what I think. That is the idea I wanted to talk in film. I believe that changes from film to film, because when we write script, the scenes are placed in a particular way. So the locale or the location of the scene also becomes a part of the narrative. If I talk specifically about Paddayi, the Paddayi, initially when I thought I had placed it in Bangalore in a very urban space, so the script actually went from place to place. Still, it was not working until it reached the coastal Karnataka, the coastal city of Mangalore, Malpe, Udupi, that area. So the location definitely plays a big role. The constant fight between nature and human is sort of represented very, very evidently there. Just to give you an example, because there's an artificial port created in Mangalore, the sea line is actually disturbed. And once you disturb the sea line, the coastal line, the sea actually starts eating up the land in some other places. So there's a lot of sea erosion, the coastal belt erosion. The road which exists today may not exist tomorrow because the sea might have just encroached that. Rather, we have encroached sea space. But, this land is constantly shifting. So what government or human being do is to dump a lot of big boulders across the sea line, as if we are building a wall against the sea, as if we can build a wall to keep the nature out of our system, which is not possible. The sea is so powerful that it keeps destroying the boulders and keep changing the sea line. So there's always a constant fight. It is almost like a wall between two warring sides. So this the location becomes very, very important in that way. If the location also starts speaking your narrative, it becomes part of your narrative, it becomes a metaphor to the concerns or the themes you're talking in a script, it becomes very, very important. At the same time, the same location gives you a lot of challenges in terms of biodiversity or the difficulties of the location. We were shooting in, mostly we were shooting in summers, and the summer is extremely hot and humid in Mangalore and that coastal area. So it was difficult production-wise because all the actors and the technicians were suffering in that way. At the same time, when we wanted to set out to sea, the monsoon had stepped in, so the sea was very, very rough, and there was a lot of reports of death of fishermen every day. So we had to wait for almost 2-3 months until the sea actually subdued, and we were able to set out to sea to shoot those portions of film. It was still challenging because the boat was constantly rocking, and it was difficult to shoot on the board. At the same time, it is exciting and challenging also because we are still representing the tales of the land, and we were speaking about those environmental challenges and importance of that environment also. So I think filmmaking is always a mixed bag of goods and challenges. I wouldn't say bad, it's always a bag of goods and challenges. We enjoyed that process anyway. See, culturally, India itself is very, very vibrant, especially the southern India, or maybe, I can probably talk more about southern India because I'm sort of familiar with this culture and traditions. I've used Bhutakola, Daivaradhane, and Yakshagana, a performing art in the film. Bhutaradhane is a worshipping form of art, performing art, whereas Yakshagana is purely a performing art. Which, by the way, takes a lot from each other, like the maybe face painting or the costume, the idea of costume. There's a lot of commonality. The interesting part is all these cultural, be it cultural performing art or the religious performing art, both these derive a lot of things from nature. For example, in Bhutakola, the cloth which is prepared for Daiva is prepared from coconut tree. Tender leaves are taken and created sort of an ornament to the Daiva. At the same time, the colors used on both the forms, Yakshagana and Bhutakola, are derived from naturally available colors from maybe a rock or some kind of salt, etc. So all these things are mixed to achieve natural colors. They achieve primary colors and then they mix and match to achieve different colors. The detailing done on Yakshagana face painting is done with the rice. So all these things are actually derived from nature, and it all represents the traditions of the land. So that sort of becomes an extension of the practices of the land. So it becomes very, very important for me as a filmmaker to talk about that, and also all the narrative which is dealt in these art forms are very, very universal. The themes are very universal. So it was also interesting to observe that the concerns which Shakespeare had about 400 years ago, 450 years ago, are also were the concerns of my people in so many years. Because if Arjuna says to Krishna, saying that I can't kill my own relatives because they are my relatives. I'm not supposed to kill them. Which is probably the same concern which Macbeth had before killing Duncan, because he thought Duncan is my guest. He is a fatherly figure to me, so I have probably killing him is wrong. So these are the same kind of concerns or the dreams we share universally. People might be, or people listening to this discussion may be living thousands of miles away from me, sitting here in India. At the same time, we share similar kind of dreams. We still share similar kind of ideas, and we still share some kind of concern to nature, to other human being. And I think that's the most beautiful thing of being a human being. And that is very nicely represented by my culture, the art of Yakshagana or the Daivaradhane, all these things. Even in Daivaradhane, the kind of worship happens is about basic things like, there's a pig which is supposed to be a god, or a marginalized person, a Dalit person from Dalit community who was sacrificed to God. He becomes a daiva, and all these things which belongs to our society, the way of life we used to live for hundreds of years. All these things are represented through performing art, worshipping art, or the mythology which teaches you about good things or bad things, or the evil things of greed. It is all same, wherever we go. The expression might be different, but the emotions are still the same. And that's why I think it was very important for me to bring in these art forms into my film Paddayi. I hope that communicates and resonates with everybody who's watching this film, wherever they are sitting in their home.